Representative Dean will present his bill, and I'll move House File 3130 to be laid over for possible inclusion.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members. Thank you for moving House File 3130 and bringing the bill before the committee. I appreciate the committee's time. I know how busy you are right now with the session, so I appreciate the time to do that. I will be as brief as possible. This bill deals with the University of Minnesota, and to all of the people who are here from the University of Minnesota, go Gophers. Appreciate all of the students who came today to advocate for the U, including my daughter, who I just saw up in my committee. So I appreciate the folks who are here. We are looking at fetal tissue research at the University of Minnesota, and this goes to some of the reporting and some of the issues that we have dealt with already this year within the legislature. And the research dealing with the procurement, the research and the disposition of fetal remains at the university has been controversial, and we've gotten some different messages from the U that we're trying to work through. And what I thought would be kind of incumbent upon us as a legislature is to say, what are the rules that currently apply to the university? What are the laws? What are the federal laws that apply to the University of Minnesota? What are the state laws that apply to the University of Minnesota? What are the internal protocols and rules and guidelines that the university has that on their code of ethics and their policies and procedures for handling this? Are we following them? Did we follow them? What happened? And how do we move forward? So I thought that it would make sense to do that. In my earliest discussions with the university after reaching out, these were the discussions that I had. I thought it would make sense to work within the Office of the Legislative Auditor to do that. They are uniquely positioned to do that with us, and they have the experience and the manpower to do that, to work with the University of Minnesota. I also talked to Auditor Nobles about that briefly earlier this year, and we have put together a bill that basically asks the university, or excuse me, asks the legislative auditor either directly or through a contract to answer those first three questions that I laid out of the state law, federal law, and internal university policies, guidelines for ethical research. Are we following them? Are we not following them? And what needs to be done? My office was contacted by Jim Nobles earlier and said that the OLA is planning on moving forward with that. The OLA, in even better news, has said that he will be requiring no additional money to do that. We always appreciate that. And they will start in a few weeks. And Mr. Nobles is here and can also answer any questions about that. I wanted to make sure that we kept the bill before us because I think it is important to understand that the legislature is interested in specific things that we want to come out of this report, and certainly want to work together with the auditor's office as well as the university to make sure that these and other important questions are answered. So with that, Madam Chair and members, I'd be happy to answer any questions, or also I understand that Mr. Nobles and also Dr. Herman is here from the University of Minnesota, as well as I see some government relations staff from the university as well to answer any questions.
Thank you, Representative Dean. I just have one quick question, and then we'll go to the rest of the questions from the members. You had said that put it in a current context as far as are we currently following? Will there be a retrospective look at it to see if there was that was being followed in the past?
Yes, and I think that that's really the extent to which we can do that. And I'm looking for a date within the legislation, a look-back period, and I'm not seeing it. has been previously used in 1.12. And I think it is retrospective without a specific date, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Representative Dean. Members, questions for Representative Dean before we move on? Representative Joachim.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair. Just a real quick question, Representative Dean, and maybe for the OLA, I'm not sure which. What does the OLA hope to ascertain that the Huron report that we just got on March 16th of this year, or 17th of this year, didn't already tell us? It looks like a lot of the findings that you're looking for, according to the report, sorry, I meant to print it out, but I didn't get a chance to, we already got answers to. So I'm just wondering what more were you hoping to learn?
Representative Dean.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Representative Joachim, thank you for pointing out that this is the University of Minnesota study that was completed by the Huron Consulting Group, and that does go into several of the pieces of information that we are looking at. It does not actually look at federal or state law compliance, so that is one area where it doesn't quite overlap. And it may very well be, and I'd ask the auditor to respond to this for himself, but it may very well be that he can use pieces of this for his own analysis to build on, so that the work that the university has done for fetal tissue research assessment in their final report on March 17th does not have to be replicated, but certainly don't want to limit the work of the auditor to that. And it is, I guess I would ask Mr. Nobles how the auditor's office does that and what he might do, but he could probably, much better than I, walk through what his next steps might be and how he might use that for himself.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, for the record, my name is Jim Nobles. I'm the legislative auditor. And I guess I would answer your question by referencing what we're doing right now at the university, and that is we are doing a follow-up review of psychiatric research. We've issued 2 reports in that area last year. We're doing a follow-up review, and we're always building on other reports that have already been done. For example, with psychiatric research studies, drug studies, we built upon an outside expert panel that the university brought in to look at the Department of Psychiatry. We met with the people who did that work. We examined their work papers, their report. And there are also other reports that are similar that the university has commissioned from an outside source. You may be aware that there were some controversies about the athletic department. The university brought in an outside investigator to examine the events that occurred. We met with that investigator. We read the report. We examined work papers. So we'll do the same with this. We'll build on what's already been done. But where we see a need to do additional work, we will do that.
Thank you, Mr. Nobles. Any other questions? Your follow-up for
Yeah.
Joachim?
Thank you, Chair. I do actually, maybe just to understand a little bit more what resources that you'll go to if it's outside of maybe your area of expertise. Like on the bill on line 1.23, it says only when necessary. To see if the policies include provisions to ensure fetal tissue is used in research only when necessary. Do you have medical doctors in the OLA that'll help decide that, or would you reach out to outside resources?
Madam Chair, members of the committee, as with other evaluations, and specifically I'd refer back to the work we did and are currently doing in the Department of Psychiatry, yes, we consulted with a group of experts, psychiatrists. We also read a great deal of literature, but we reach out to people who are experts in the field, both ones that are made available to us by the university, but ones we seek out and communicate with as well.
Representative Joachim, do you have a follow-up?
Thank you, Chair. No, thank you. That helps clear up a little bit for me. I'm a little worried about using, and I know, thank you for taking away the appropriation. That was a little concerning, but I know it is also still state money that runs your office, so I worry about replicating work that's already been done with taxpayer money. So, thank you.
Okay, Representative Isaacson.
Mr. Nobles, how familiar are you with the previous audit done on the fetal tissue research?
Representative
Madam Chair, we've reviewed it. We've reviewed a number of documents already. You might remember that this topic was on our list as a potential evaluation topic. So we were developing background material on this previous to my agreement last week to go ahead and do this as a special review.
Representative Isaacson.
And so I had to step out just for a second, so if I missed it, I apologize if we're repeating ourselves, but substantially what we're talking about being different from the first audit we talked about was just the review of how we complied with state and federal laws prior to 2010, is that correct? Or is there more to it that you'd be doing beyond what the Huron study did?
Mr. Nobles.
Well, I mean, we will get into the evaluation and examine that and make that judgment, you know, as we learn more about what is going on at the university. I mean, we will use a variety of sources, not just that report, but others as well. We'll certainly be interviewing people at the university. We're currently, as I said, dealing with many of the same people. Dr. Herman, the Vice President for Research, we're dealing with a good deal on the psychiatric issues. So we'll use our normal methodologies of looking at a wide range of documents, interviewing a wide range of people.
Representative Isaacson.
And then Representative Dean, would you say that you were not satisfied with the Huron study and that's why you want to do this, or just trying to understand what more needs to be discovered that I might have missed and just kind of understand where this is coming from, I guess, a little bit more? That'd be great.
Representative Dean.
Madam Chair and Representative Isaacson, actually, I mean, I started working on this before that I knew that there was a report coming out. But I think as legislators and all of us want to make sure that we feel comfortable that the issue is being taken care of. I would applaud the U for beginning its own internal investigation, you know, without us having to ask for that. So I would commend them for doing that. But I also think that the Legislative Auditor's Office will give comfort to Minnesotans who might want to have assurance that this is an independent view of the program, to make sure that when we are completed and moving forward, that we are complying with state and federal laws and that we are adhering to the ethical standards of the university. That's something that we can be proud of from the outside looking in. And so that, for that reason, I wanted to make sure that we move forward with legislation to do that.
Representative Isaacson, do you have a follow-up?
Yes, Madam Chair. So, and maybe there's a mechanism here I'm not familiar with. So you, Mr. Nobles, have already, under special authority, are doing an audit, and then simultaneously, parallel, you're writing a bill to ensure that we do an audit?
Representative Dean.
Or are those two, did I miss something there? Or do you need one to do the other or not?
Madam Chair and Representative Isaacson, the legislative auditor has complete authority to investigate and do what they need to do independently. Occasionally, the legislature will ask the legislative auditor to do a specific audit, which his office will do, and we will also provide additional funds necessary. Sometimes the legislative auditor does that internally. Sometimes they will hire it out for a specialty purpose. Or in the case of last year, I think we provided some resources to the legislative auditor, and they returned those dollars to us when the audit was unnecessary or substantially complete. So sometimes we do it, we ask the legislative auditor to do stuff. Sometimes he does it independently with consultation with the legislature, looking for ideas and what we need.
Representative Isaacson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Nobles, do you need this legislation to do your audit?
Madam Chair, Representative Isaacson and members of the committee, I do not, but I don't oppose it in any way. I mean, I think it shows the level of interest that the legislature has. Frankly, we already knew that it had a high level of interest among legislators from the results of your voting on topics. So, again, last week, when all of the various topics that we were considering for evaluations were before the Legislative Audit Commission, the members of the Legislative Audit Commission and I had a conversation about this particular topic, particularly because we are, as I've said before, already at the university doing research in a similar area, and that is clinical research, in this case involving live human beings, and the case with fetal tissue involving fetal tissue.
Madam Chair?
Representative Isaac.
Thank you. Well, first of all, I'm very happy you're doing the audit on the psychiatric side of that. I think that's very good. But my understanding is that if this bill weren't to pass, that in no way affects whether you're going to get your audit done. Is that correct?
Madam Chair, that is correct. I've made a commitment to do this. Made that commitment last week before the Legislative Audit Commission. They concurred that is something that we should do, and that we will use our existing resources. I personally will be involved in the research with my legal counsel and anyone else that we need to be involved.
Thank you.
Any other questions from members? Representative Whalen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you, Representative Dean, for bringing the bill forward, and Auditor Nobles. I just had a quick question. You just mentioned legal counsel, and I'm not very familiar with how the legislative auditor goes about investigating compliance to state and federal laws. And so I'm aware that there is some disagreement right now within the legal community about some of the University of Minnesota's compliance to these laws. So how will the office address that? Will you just report kind of both sides, or how does that work?
Mr. Noble.
Chair, members of the committee, we are almost, well, I would say literally daily involved in many legal issues. We do a great deal of compliance work. It's what we do. And so we are constantly having to review statutes, review case law, federal law. We are the auditor of the state's compliance with federal law as well. So we do have in-house legal counsel. We also often seek legal counsel from House legal counsel, Senate legal counsel. We also have the authority to look at the legal opinions that the university has obtained on this issue. We, in fact, already have those and have reviewed them. It's my understanding that those are, university has put those under attorney-client privilege, but they are available to us and we've reviewed them. So we will indeed review all of the various legal arguments related to this, and to the degree we feel comfortable, we'll come to our own opinion. If we believe there's ambiguity in the law, that's what we'll say.
Follow-up.
No, thank you, and thank you, Chair Nobles, or Auditor Nobles.
Any other member questions? Representative Dean, did you want to have another testifier, or?
No, I just want to thank the auditor for his time and work in advance of this. And just, very briefly, a few years ago, we at the legislature were grappling with the University of Minnesota stem cell research and how that was going to play out and where we were going to go. And then with the sudden advancements in stem cell research for non-embryonic pluripotent stem cells, everybody just kind of breathed a sigh of relief that technology had hurdled the ethical problem that we had. And I think, quite frankly, a lot of people, it took their eye off the ball for the ethics issues within that. And now we're kind of, this year, kind of got a queasy feeling in our stomach like, oh, it's back, or we missed the ball on this. So I'm very happy that the auditor and the university are very focused on this, as well as many legislators on both sides of the aisle. We're very interested in making sure that we're following the highest ethical standards as well as state and federal law on this. So I appreciate the committee's time and would appreciate your support going forward for the audit as well as for other legislation for oversight, which is our job. So thanks.
Thank you, Representative Dean. So this is a public hearing. Are there any members of the public who would like to testify for or have voice concerns with the bill? Okay, seeing none, then we are laying this over for possible inclusion. Thank you, Representative Dean.
Thank you, Madam Chair, staff, and members.